I want to share with you one story 67 years ago. I remember it like it would happen yesterday. You will hear the story in details. Everyone will make his conclusions out of this story. What is the message? What can we take with us home from that story, which is a real one in all the details? I am responsible for the truth of this story. April 11, 1945, we were liberated in the concentration camp Buchenwald, near the city of culture in Germany, Weimar. It's a suburb of Weimar, northeast Germany. We were liberated after 6 years of horror by the American troops led by General Patton. Patton entered, and one of the chaplains who was of the first jeeps, command cars, to break the wall, the gate of Buchenwald, was Rabbi Herschel Schachter, who lives today in the Bronx, born in America. And we both appeared with the story of the day of liberation on April 11, same day, but 38 years later, 1983, with President Reagan in the Capitol Center of Maryland. It was the day of liberation by the American troops. And he made the president and a gathering of survivors from the United States and Canada. And we both were invited to speak at this gathering, 23,000 people. Rabbi Schachter was on the stage with all the dignitaries. There was a young diplomat in the Israeli embassy in Washington at that time who represented the state of Israel. The young diplomat was Benjamin Netanyahu. Gideon Hausner was there, the persecutor of Adolf Eichmann in the process which took place 50 years ago. And Rabbi Herschel Schachter told the story from the day of liberating Buchenwald. It was almost the end of the war. Auschwitz was liberated by the Russian army, the Red Army, 4 months earlier, on January 27th. Buchenwald was not in Poland, it was in Germany. Bergen-Belsen was liberated 4 days after us, April 15, by the British army. So Rabbi Herschel Schachter stood up and told the story. We came in. At the gate, there was a heap of corpses, bleeding yet. The American aircrafts bombed. The German soldiers shooted. People wanted to escape from that hell. They were running towards the gate, but the gate was still closed. So they found their last station there. They were shot, or from air, or from here, and a heap of corpses. Can you imagine a young American boy, chaplain, seeing this picture and the screamings? All of a sudden he has discovered a vivid couple of eyes searching at him. He was afraid, maybe a German. He took out the pistol from his bag and very carefully he surrounded the heap of the corpses. Some of them were still alive. Then he discovered that this couple of eyes belonged to a child. That child was very short at that time, like 5 years old. Immediately he understood a child in a concentration camp among the corpses can be only Jewish. Other nations, what do they have to look in Buchenwald? He came to the child, raised him, lifted him up and took him in his arms. He was crying and the child was frightened, very frightened. The child saw a new kind of uniform with a gun, a pistol, shooting all the time. He knew all kinds of uniforms, SA and SS and Einsatzgruppen and Luftwaffe and the others. Another kind. So there is no end of shooting, no end of killing. He was very frightened. So Rabbi Schechter started to smile and forced himself to smile and said to him in Yiddish, "Mein Kind, my child, what is your name?" The child said, "Lulek, they call me Lulek." From Srulek in Hebrew, in Yiddish, Israel, the Polish nickname is Lulek. "Where is your father?" He said, asked him. "In the gas chambers." "And your mother?" "I don't know." "How old are you?" The child answered, "What a difference does it make? I'm older than you." The chaplain was sure that the child is completely mad. He said, "I am a soldier, and you are still a child. Why do you think that you are older than me?" The child answered, "Because you laugh and you cry as a child. I stopped laughing years ago and I don't even cry. My eyes are dry. So who is older?" At that moment, in the capital center of Maryland, the orchestra of the American Navy played the song of the partisans. "Don't say this is my final way." And this was the moment I had to climb up of behind the coulisses, up on the stage, and they showed the picture, my picture with the rifle on my shoulder. This child who was behind the heap of the corpses is today, it was 1983, the chief rabbi of Netanya, Israel. I came on the stage, we braced each other, Rabbi Hershel Schechter and me, and President Reagan, a very touching man, very emotional. He walked on the stage, and all the televisions and the radio could hear how he said, "Let me touch a living legend." This was this was the story of elderly and childhood, which is very proportional, very relatively. What is old, what is young, who is a child, who is an old man. It's not a question of age, of statistics, of numbers. About crying, about tears, I want to tell you the story. After the liberation, we went by train to France. In France, 90 kilometers from Paris, was a village called Écouilly. In Écouilly was a sanatorium held by organizations of welfare, OSE, the Joint Jewish Agency, for orphans of Buchenwald and Bergen-Belsen, to bring them back to life, physically, medically, and spiritually, if it is possible. We were there a group of 220 boys. One of them is a very famous today. He came with me from Buchenwald, the same train, to the same Écouilly. His name is Elie Wiesel. He came to Buchenwald at the end of the war. They came from Hungary. We are from Poland, so we were in the hell the whole 6 years. Not at the end of the war, but since 1939, the first ghetto on the ground, on the soil of Poland, was created in my home city, my hometown, Piotrków, Trybunalski. First ghetto, historically. So we were in the war 6 years, almost. Thin, no one tooth, and orphans. There was a Jewish lady, Rachel Mintz, born in Lodz. She knew French. She was a student or whatever in France before the war. So the organizations asked her to be the mother, the psychologist of all these children in Écouilly. We appreciated her very much. Once upon a day, in the lunchtime, she stood up in the dining room and said, "Boys," she spoke Polish to us, "I have a request. Today, 4:00 p.m., very distinguished guests will arrive to Écouilly. The mayor of the city, the French, the head of the police, the head of the army units in around, and the leaders of the organizations who keep this sanatorium here in Écouilly. Please, I want all of you to be on the grass in the square in the center of the village to welcome the guests. They will bless you." One of us stood up. I don't even know his name. I was maybe the youngest at that group, 8 years old. Exactly 8 years. He stood up and said, "Pana Mincowa, Mrs. Mintz, we will not be there. None of us will be there. We have no relationship with these people. We oppose them. They come now to take photos with orphans of Holocaust. Where were they the last 6 years when they slaughtered our parents? The police and the army and the mayor of the city in Paris, in France. We are a few weeks after the liberation. It was 2 months after the liberation, on June. We have heard, we have inquired what happened in those 6 years. Some of them cooperated with the Nazis. Some others, the majority, didn't do a word, didn't do anything to save us. Now they come because it's popular. because they need us for public relations, we will not be there. Mrs. Mintz knew that these people, in favor of these people, the whole situation is here. And many others who will follow us in this sanatorium. It was just the beginning, June 45. She said, but I tell you a secret. Every one of you will receive a package present, and his name will be on this bag, present. For boys that 6 years didn't receive any gift, and they were numbers and not human beings, your name is on a bag, and you receive a present. Maybe a toothbrush with toothpaste, whatever. But a bag carrying your name, you are somebody. You are a person. You are not a number anymore. Still the young boy stood and said, Madame Pintsova, Mrs. Mintz, we don't need their presence. We give up the visit. We don't want to look at them. We are upset. We are angry, and we will demonstrate. And what do we have with them? Some of us are on the way to Eretz Yisrael, Aliyat HaNoar, youth Aliyah of the Jewish Agency. So what do we have with the French? She said the last word, please do it for my sake. I ask you, do me a favor. And she left the dining room. A decision was made immediately. Because of Mrs. Mintz, all of us will be there on the grass exactly at 4 o'clock. But we will not cooperate. We will demonstrate. How? We will not give them hands. We will not stand up when they arrive. We will sit on the grass. We will not look at them. We will look at the grass. They will not see our faces. We will not see theirs. They will feel and understand and deliver the message, how angry we are because of their behavior during the war. What a character of boys. In my home in Tel Aviv, you can see a Paris Match, French magazine, a weekly magazine, from 1965. 2 pages is one picture. The Buchenwald. On the picture you see from the back, someone took a photographer. A lady stands near a microphone. Next to her on a bench, sitting few people, some with uniform, some in civil. From the stage, you see dozens of shaved heads. No one couple of eyes. No one face. Shaved heads. That's what they saw from the stage. This is the picture of the visit in Equi, historically. They understood that they have no ears here for their speeches. No one pays attention to them. Mrs. Mintz understood as well. She made it very fast, very short. Monsieur so-and-so, Mon General so-and-so, will bless you. And each of them stood up, gave up his speech. They said just one sentence. We welcome you very warm here in France. And we wish you success in life. You are in a new milestone in your life. If you need us, we are here for you. We will backing us. We will support you. No more. No hands, silent. Then she said, last speaker will be Mr. Leibovitch in France, Nequy. Mr. Leibovitch is also from the same city like me in Lodz. He had a factory of textile in Paris, near Paris. He was taken with his wife and 3 children to Auschwitz. All his family perished there. He lost the whole family. He didn't find, he himself survived. He didn't find one of the relatives in Lodz. He went to France to see what happened to his factory. The factory was still working. He's a wealthy man, but he gave a swore, a promise, that all his energy, all his time, and all his money is dedicated for orphanages of Holocaust, like his own children. Mr. Leibovitch is one of the sponsors of EQUI. Please, Leibovitch. Spontaneously, with no word, 220 heads were lifted up with sympathy and solidarity and empathy to Leibovitch. No reason to demonstrate against Leibovitch. He's one of us. He's a survivor. And all of us looked at him. For the first time they saw faces. Mr. Leibovitch wasn't a great orator. He was very touched when he arrived to EQUI. He was very moved when he saw the demonstration that we didn't look at the guests. And then all of a sudden this change that everyone is looking at him, he was so emotional that he couldn't say a word. He held the microphone, trembling, and said only 3 words I will never forget, in Yiddish. Kinder! Children. Teure Kinder! Dear children. And he started to cry out in the microphone, an old man, not very old, but adult, crying in the microphone. It was so silent in the valley. It was very, very unique and unpleasant. Mrs. Mintz stood up from the bench, took him in his arm and said, Mr. Leibovitch, you made already your speech. Please sit down. Was silent, like here, and then every one of us on the grass felt that his cheeks became wet of our own tears. Children who didn't cry for a long time. All of us, and we were ashamed to cry, because it doesn't fit a hero, a survivor, a katzetnik, the one who was in a katzet, in a lager, concentration camp. Everyone tried to dry his face with his sleeves, but we couldn't, because one of us broke out with a cry loudly, and like an infection, he attracted all the kids after him, and we all started to cry loudly. free, loud. Maybe 5 minutes, a valley of tears was there. Crying and feeling so good that one of us, a boy of 19, 20 years old, one of the oldest in the group, Aharon is his name, stood up after 5 minutes and said the following. The speech of Aharon, this is my story and my message tonight. Pana Mintsova, Mrs. Mintz, dear guests, friends, on behalf of my friends, I want to thank you. Not to thank you for the visit we didn't ask for. Not to thank you about the gifts we didn't want to. But there is one gift you gave us that I feel an obligation to thank you for it. The ability to cry. This is a great present. And I will explain myself, said Aaron, a boy of 19, 20. When they slaughtered my father in my very eyes, I was 16. I kept my lips not to cry, not to give the enemy, the Nazis, the satisfaction a Jewish child is crying when they have murdered his father in his eyes. Since then, I never left a tear. I was beaten. I was frozen. I was starving. But I never cried. Who speaks about smiling or laughing? Never. I must share with you one of my thoughts. Since the liberation on April 11, we are now 2 months later, I don't sleep one night because I bother myself with one thought. What will be my future? Do I have as a survivor a kind of a future? I am not a human being. If I cannot cry, if I cannot smile, if I have no emotions, maybe instead of an heart, fresh and blood, I have a stone in my chest. So who will marry me? Who will build with me a family? If I'm not a human being, I will never be a father. I will never have children of my own. I am not a human being. Ich bin nicht kein Mensch. 2 months that I bother myself with this thought. What will be? I was ashamed to share my thought with my friends. 5 minutes ago, when Mr. Leibovich came, I felt for the first time that I am a mensch. And I know the secret. The one who can cry today has a chance to smile tomorrow. It shows that we are human beings with emotions, sentiments. So thank you for the gift of crying you gave us. Before I finish, said Aaron, I want to tell you something. And this is a lesson I want you to take with you home. All the time before the war, I used to go for a summer vacation to Warsaw, the capital city of Poland, where my Zayde, my grandfather, lived. When I was there on July, August, even the last year before the war broke out, 1939, I spent with my Zaidi. He used to close the store early in the afternoon and used to take me on a walk on the bank of the Wisla. Wisla is the main river of Poland, from one edge to the other, the Wisla. We used to walk in the afternoon, summertime, and the grandfather, who knew the Bible by heart, used to teach me sentences and chapters of the Bible, and he gave me a home lesson that I will learn it by heart and will be tested a day after. 6 years I didn't open a book. 6 years I didn't see a Bible in my eyes. So I forgot everything. Everything learned from my Zaidi is forgotten, except one chapter. Because every morning, those 6 years, wherever I woke up, instead of modeh ani that we say, I used to repeat that chapter that the Zaidi told me in Warsaw. And this kept me alive. This gave me the hope. This encouraged me to survive. I will tell you in Hebrew this chapter as it is in the Bible, and I will translate it in Polish. הייתה עלי יד השם, ויניחני בתוך הבקעה, והיא מלאה עצמות. והנה רבות מאוד על פני הבקעה, והנה יבשות מאוד. ויאמר אלי בן אדם, התחיינה העצמות האלה? Ezekiel chapter 37. The hand of the Lord Almighty was upon me. He brought me to a valley full with bones. Very many bones, very dry bones. Then the Almighty applied to me and said, Yechezkel, do you think that these bones have a chance to live? And I said, only you know the answer. I don't know. The bones came one to the other and they became corpses. The spirit came into the bodies and they stood up on their legs. A great battalion. The allegoric is Ha'atzamot ha'yeveshot, these dry bones are a symbol, they do represent the Jewish nation. They say we are lost of hope. Our bones are dry. We are cut off of life, disconnected. But here in Ekui, the bones come one to the other. We have doctors here, and nurses, and food. Physically, from the dry bones became corpses, but we didn't have a spirit of life yet. A few minutes ago, when Mr. Leibovich broke out with his cry, the spirit, the soul, the feelings came into the bodies. We are the dry bones. At the end of this prophecy, the Almighty promises, I will open your graves, O my people, and I will lift you up out of your graves, my people, and I will bring you to the land of Israel. We are on our way to the land of Israel. So thank you, said Aaron, for the visit, but mainly for the present. It shows us that we have a spirit of life. We are human beings. I never knew what happened to that Aaron. He spoke like a prophet, a philosopher, A great man, not a child survivor, orphanage. Even Mark Twain can learn from Aaron to speak or to write. He studied the University of Life. And what life? Struggling every moment for life. But almost 50 years later, 11 years ago, there was the Intifada in Israel. In the coffee shop called Sbarro, in the corner of Jaffa and King George streets in Jerusalem, 2:00 p.m., a suicide bomber came in and killed 15 people and injured dozens of people in noontime and lunch. It was August, I think the 2nd of August today. Today, 11 years ago, 2001, among the victims was a family. I officiated the wedding of the parents. Tzira Friedman from Netanya, and her husband was Oleg Hadash, a new immigrant from Netherlands, Moti Mordechai Scheves Hurder. Both were killed together with 3 of their children. 2 daughters, Leale, 10 years old, and Chayale, 8 years old, were brought to the Bikur Cholim hospital nearby, hardly injured. I went a day later, Friday, to the funeral, and I gave the funeral speech in Jerusalem. And my habit as chief rabbi was all the injured, soldiers and civilians, all over the country, I have to go to visit and to take care. To go to the funerals, to comfort the mourners in the Shiva, and to go to the hospitals. From Soroka in Beersheba in the south, till Ha'emek in Afula in the north, there was no one hospital without injured people of the Intifada, the riots. After the funeral of the Scheves Chuder family, I went to the Hadassah hospital in Jerusalem, Ein Karem, to the emergency room, where there were only emergency cases, most difficult problems. They used to go with me, the staff, Professor Aryeh Durst, the head of the surgery department, took me to the room, and next to each bed, he told me more or less the situation and the chance for life. But the families were also represented in that emergency room. So I knew that Professor Durst doesn't tell me the whole truth. We went out from the emergency room. I made a prayer by each of the injured. Mishe Berach. We went out. There were 4 professors with me. Professor Durst, Professor Gottesman, Professor Slavin, and the principal, Professor Shapiro. The corridor was full with us, the 5 of us. Nobody could cross the corridor. And they explained me exactly what's going on now with the injured. Then I hear a voice, Slicha, excuse me, אפשר לעבור פה? May I cross here? We took the 2 sides to enable the one to cross the corridor. He crossed us, then he looked behind, said, Harav Lau? I said, yes. I am Aaron, Aaron of Ekui. I lost my tongue. 50 years. And I remember every word he said that tie with the dry bones. I didn't say a word, but he continued. I watch you. I follow you on the radio, on the television. All these years. And you don't know me. I work here in Hadassah. Do you remember me? I said to him, Aaron of Ekui, how can I forget? For me you are Aaron of the dry bones. He started to cry again and he left us. He escaped. The 4 professors didn't understand the dialogue. What is EQE? Why dry bones? They knew Aaron. He's the accountant of Hadassah Hospital in Ein Karem. Today retired already. He's alive. He's 80 years old. I told the professors the story of EQE and the speech of Aaron Landsberg. No one eye was dry when I finished the story of the 4 professors. They didn't know what a guy this Aaron is. Very modest, very moderate. What I want to tell you, this story, I think you can understand by yourselves. One chapter of the Bible kept a boy, a lonely boy, 6 years, and gave him the encouragement to survive. He understood that he has a reason, a motive, why he must survive, never to give up. Starving, beaten, freezing, as he himself said. And he repeated every day in the morning this chapter 37 of Ezekiel with the dry bones. And remember the lesson that the Zayd gave him on the Wisla River. He was alone. Lost the whole family. He struggled, he made it. He lives till now, 67 years since then. What one chapter of the prophet can make. And one thing, the German, speaking about redemption of the Jewish people, to emphasize the word Jewish people. They didn't declare a war against Jews physically only, about Judaism spiritually as well. In my home, there is a copy of the last will, the testament of Adolf Hitler, made in the bunker in Berlin, April 9th, 1945. In German, with his signature, and the signatures of the 4 witnesses, like Martin Bormann, Joseph Goebbels. I have received it from a museum of Holocaust in New York. They bought it, and I have a copy of it. What is the last sentence of his will? His last will. A testament before going to commit suicide in the bunker. Usually you speak about your family in the testament, children. the future of your country, if you love it, of your nation. Last Testament. What is the last paragraph? I quote, I order the leaders of the Reich, the followers of the leadership of the Third Reich, to an pitiless fight against the international poisoner of all mankind, universal Judaism, Adolf Hitler. We are the poisoner of mankind. And that's what he had in his mind in his last sentence. To a pitiless resistance, fight against the international poisoner, Judaism. When he started officially, he didn't start with our bodies. He didn't touch a Jewish bank like the Rothschilds bank. 10 months before the war, on 8th to 9th November 1938, was the Kristallnacht. It's a very nice word, night of crystal. Destroying, burning in flames over 1,000 shuls, synagogues throughout Germany. To break the crystal chandeliers, to burn the Torah scrolls in the holy arks, to burn the Sidurim, the prayer books, and by the way, to kill 6,000 Yidden and to take other 30,000 to concentration camps like Dachau and Buchenwald in Germany. This was the first step of the Nazis against Judaism, not against Jews. He knew that our heart is in the synagogue. He knew what means a Sefer Torah for a Jewish man. He wanted first of all to break our spirit. So he declared a war against Judaism. Lo yizacher Shem Yisrael od. So the name Israel will not be mentioned anymore. This was the point. That Aaron, who is a chapter of the dry bones, won the battle. He won the battle. He defeated the dream, the plan of Adolf Hitler and his colleagues. He showed them that in spite of all the obstacles, we are here. We live with a spirit of Judaism in our bodies. Without it, we have no task for life, no destination. So please remember, the war was not only against our bodies, the war was against our heritage. Every time that you bench, you put the tefillin, you say the Kaddish, you say whatever, Shacharit bin Harvit, you observe the Shabbat, the Jewish heritage, you win the historic battle, and the final victory is in our hands, in the spirit of Am Yisrael Chai.